Buenos días a todos, bienvenidos a la presentación de este informe de la agencia, que hemos hecho alguna innovación sobre ello con una mesa redonda de las asociaciones españolas que puedan opinar sobre cuál es la situación del gas natural en este momento. Bienvenidos a todos, espero que os encontréis todos bien y ya estamos en esta línea de futuro que nos hemos planteado en el pasado. Como os habíamos indicado, vamos a hacer esta presentación en inglés con nuestras personas invitadas y vamos a cambiar a inglés. I'm going to switch to English. This is a pleasure having all of you here. Jean-Baptiste Dubreuil, Molnar, Ms. Molnar too, and our people from Spanish Association, you know, her, Marta Margarit, the managing director of the Sedigas, Verónica Riviere, the managing director of the Gas Industrial, and Javier Rodríguez. Don't worry, Javier, I asked the ladies first. No? This is the question. I don't know the role, but this is our system. Well, thank you for coming, all of you. This is a pleasure having all of you here. This report of natural gas, this is a report who has been put out by the IEA in June this year. This is a complete review of all the reports in the natural gas. They will forecast until 2025 after COVID, the situation of the COVID. I think it's very a complete situation of the natural gas. I think the levels they are analyzing 2019, they call cool down, they are analyzing 2020, they call melt down, and they are analyzing 2021 to 2025, they call rebound or beyond. This is a good characterization of the, thank you all of you guys for this characterization of the presentation. Well, the system for this is before at the beginning we have this presentation by these two people. I'll introduce them from now. And after this, we will have a short roundtable between the Spanish Association, considering the situation of the natural gas now and from now on at this period. And at the end, we will have a Q&A section. At the meantime, you can send your questions to the chat, open chat, or you can send to Pablo de Juan. All of you know him about this, and we will translate to our guests this question. Well, we will start, and let me introduce Jean-Baptiste Dubreuil. This is the second time he came here. He joined the IEA in September 2017, and he started with natural gas. Previously, has worked for many years in ENGIE. He's a well-recognized person in the area of the natural gas. He is a senior analyst for natural gas in the IEA. And thank you for coming, Jean-Baptiste, to this. And Gergely Molnar, he is a Hungarian, and she joined a person. He joined the IEA in 2018. He started to collaborate with these reports, I think, last year. Jean-Baptiste, I think you will have the floor now, and from now on for minutes you consider. You can't see Jean-Baptiste because he has some problems with the video, no? But you can hear him because we have tried before. Jean-Baptiste, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. Good morning, everyone. Buenos días todos. Muchas gracias a Arcadio y al Club Español de la Energía. Es un gran placer, como siempre, compartir los resultados de nuestro análisis con vosotros.
El próximo año lo haremos en español, Jean-Baptiste.
El problema es, I have reached the limits of my Spanish now, so...
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yo voy a conseguir con inglés. I'm going to switch to English, both because it will probably be more convenient both for Spanish-speaking and non-Spanish-speaking if I do not inflict upon you my poor Spanish remnants. So it's a great pleasure to be with you virtually this morning, even if due to some technical issues I'm not able to show my face. I can see you, but you can't see me. I would like again to thank Arcadio and his team at the Spanish Energy Club for hosting this presentation. It's always a pleasure to come even virtually to speak about the IEA's publications. So this year, we as every year we do publish our 5-year market outlook for natural gas globally. But this year, given the context of the unprecedented crisis triggered by the coronavirus, our market report is providing a very strong focus on more recent natural gas market developments and the short to medium-term impacts of the COVID-19 on global gas trends. And this is something that we would like to share with you this morning with my colleague Gergely, who leads our European research for natural gas. So to begin with, I would like to share with you a quick look back at what happened in the recent past. We've had 2 years of growth, above 2% in 16-17, and what we dubbed last year the golden year in 2018, with close to 5% growth globally. And after these 3 years of strong consumption cooled down in terms of growth last year, slightly less than 2%, which is in line with the average annual growth rates observed before 2016. What happened is that the fuel switching remained the main engine of growth, but with coal to gas gains being partly offset by exceptional hydro activity last year, and even some marginal gas to oil conversion in the Middle East. In terms of geography, China and India remain the main driver behind global gas demand growth, as for the previous years, but this significantly slowed down in terms of consumption growth. This year, 2020, is unprecedented at all levels in terms of health, macroeconomy, global trade, energy demand, and of course, natural gas is not likely to escape this global downturn. This remains, as of today, beginning of July, the middle of the year, remains most uncharted territory to us all. But what we have seen so far is that gas appears to be so far less impacted than other fossil fuels. If we compare to oil, I see that, of course, the exposure of natural gas to the transportation consumption is much less. And if we compare to coal, we see that the low prices for natural gas mean that gas-fired power generation is making gains at the expense of hard coal in the US and of lignite and hard coal in Europe, despite a decline in power demand. But yet, and in spite of those mitigating factors, gas is expected to face its sharpest drop ever, with what we estimate as a 4% annual decline in 2020, or about 150 BCM of loss, which is more or less twice the loss observed in 2009 after the financial crisis. One thing which is worth to mention is that the global gas market was already in not a very good shape before the beginning of the COVID crisis this year. We have had this last winter one of the warmest recorded winters in the Northern Hemisphere, which had a strong impact on space heating needs, therefore natural gas demand for both the residential and power generation sectors. European gas demand in January was 9% below last year. It recovered progressively until the implementation of the lockdowns in March, in Spain, in Italy, in France, in Belgium, in the UK, in the form of hard lockdowns of the whole economy, but each and every European country suffered an array of measures aiming at curbing the propagation of the virus. And this heavily impacted the consumption for power generation and industry and dragged down consumption 7% below last year as of end of May, and slowly recovering last month. But I'll leave it to Gergely to further develop on the European market. The situation in the US is a bit different, even if the US market has gone through the same issues. It started first quarter with 5% below last year, also impacted by the mild temperatures. And it partly recovered since April, in spite of lower demand from the industrial sector, thanks mainly to low gas prices, which pushed further coal to gas switching in power generation, even in the most coal dominant regions where coal historically makes most of the power generation. We see now that gas is the leading source of fuel burning in the US. In Asia, the different markets have followed different trends so far. If we look first at Japan, which is the world's largest liquefied natural gas importer, we see that its imports progressively decline compared to last year, which was impacted, of course, also by the warm temperatures, the economic activity slowdown, also the decreasing share of natural gas in the power mix with the progressive restart of nuclear capacity in Japan. China was the first country impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, with lockdowns enacted in February. And since the month of March, we see that the consumption is bouncing back, but the growth rate remains very sluggish at around 3% year-on-year growth as of end of June. Other emerging Asian markets like India experienced a very sharp increase in consumption in the first month of 2020. In India, for instance, we see that as of end of February, consumption was 15% above last year, which was supported by ample and cheap LNG supply. However, the implementation of the nationwide lockdown in March of 26 had an immediate impact on gas demand, which collapsed in April. And by the end of May, see that virtually all the growth has been erased compared to last year. So this is the situation as it stands today in terms of demand. But this overall decline also is visible on the supply side. A quick overlook of the main supply factors globally. On the left of the chart, you have the main producers output from the US and from Russia. And on the right, you have the main indicators of trade, global LNG trade, and European gas imports. So for production, we see two different stories when you look at the US and Russia. In the US, we see that up until May, domestic production was remain resilient and stable around 80 BCM per month, which was not the case in June. You see that it starts really declining and even going below last year at about 76 BCM for the month of June. This is partly because of the impact on oil production in the US. You know that part of the gas production in the US is associated to oil, and of course the crash of the oil prices has had strong impact on oil production in the US and therefore on associated gas production. The situation in Russia is different. You see that on the red curve in the Russian dry gas production graph, you see that it's a steep decline since the beginning of the year, which is impacted both by decline of Russian gas consumption for the domestic market, and also fierce competition for exports in the European market, especially with the strong development of LNG exports to Europe. So as of end of June, Russian gas production was down 10% year on year. In terms of trade, see that global LNG trade is going down, especially last month. It owes to the fact that Europe, which plays the role of the balancing market, has been absorbing a lot of LNG ever since the middle of last year, mid-2019. Europe was importing much less LNG last month, minus 40% month on month, which has an impact on global trade as Asian imports still progressively recovering. And this is also impacted when you look at the overall shape of European gas imports. It's going down, but again, the contribution of LNG is very strong, and the contribution of pipeline gas, especially from Algeria and Russia, is heavily impacted. So all in all, production is over capacity, demand is going down, which of course has an impact on prices. We see that prices are going down very remarkably since the beginning of the year, minus 20% in the US, minus 50% in Europe, almost minus 60% in Asia. Most of the drop occurred in Europe and Asia, and you can see on the graph that this was further accelerated with the lockdowns in March and April, which has a very strong impact on the level of prices. And we're seeing some progressive recoveries since the lifting of the lockdowns since May. TTF is going back to almost $2.5 per MMBTU, and also the Asian LNG a bit above. But we're still at very low levels compared to last year. So this is the picture as it stands today. If we look at the whole year, what we do anticipate is that the global downturn in gas consumption will affect all countries, all regions, and all sectors. In terms of regions, the bulk of the consumption decline is set to happen in mature markets in Europe, North America, and Eurasia, which altogether are expected to take 75% of the losses, which is again a combination of very mild winter, the impact of the lockdowns, especially in Europe, which have been very harsh in terms of consumption, and the prospect of a very slow recovery in terms of macroeconomy for the coming months. For the other regions, they're less impacted in terms of absolute volumes because of the low share of gas in their energy mix, and also because of the lower exposure to space heating use. In Asia, we do assume that some countries such as China and India will still experience some growth, albeit it will be very limited. In terms of sectors, we do anticipate that half of the losses will come from the power generation sector, especially in Europe, where gas is squeezed in between lower electricity consumption on the one hand and the growing share of renewables on the other hand. The good thing in terms of fuel competition so far is that gas is making progress against coal, against oil, but this could be reverted if price dynamics change. And we've already have seen some signs of increasing oil consumption in the Middle East because of the surplus of oil products in the region and the very cheap costs associated to those products. The other sectors, if we quickly look at the split, residential consumption, it's mainly impacted by the warm winter. The commercial industrial consumption is hit by the impact of the closures during the lockdown and the slow return to activity. Also, demand from the energy sector is affected by low gas production, processing, and lower consumption from oil refineries. So the situation we are currently going through is expected to be a record decline in the history of the natural gas market, about 150 BCM, which is, again, twice as big as the impact of the financial crisis 10 years ago. But the story stops there, because the financial crisis 2009, we had a very strong rebound in 2010. So it was minus 2% in 2009 and bounced back plus 8% in 2010. We don't expect to have such a rebound in the next year, in 2021. We do assume that this rebound will come mainly from the mature markets. So that's the light blue part that you see on the bar charts, because they were the hardest hit, and the progressive recovery from industry and power generation will help to have additional volumes of gas consumed for next year. We do also expect some marginal coal to gas switching helped by low prices, and also heating demand from residential to resume to its normal level after the very mild temperatures that we have experienced on the past winter. The additional demand is expected to come from fast-growing markets, especially from Asia, which will be fostered by economic rebound and the competitive gas prices. Also, to some extent, additional consumption coming from the energy sector itself, with production kicking back and having some impact in gas consumption for producing and exporting regions in the Middle East, in Eurasia, and in North America. After 2021, it's up to Asia, especially to China and India, to drive half the incremental demand, followed by other emerging markets, especially the Middle East. So the storyline looks like we've had a major issue this year. It's progressively returning to normal, with India, China, and the other fast-growing Asian markets leading the pack. However, this is not this narrative is not supported by a return to business as usual. We do assume that the current COVID crisis will have long-lasting impacts on natural gas markets. And on the demand side, in spite of the progressive recovery, some of the pre-COVID growth potential is lost. This is assumed that about 75 BCM per year of incremental gas demand will be lost by 25 compared to our initial forecast. This is more or less the equivalent of last year's global gas growth. So you can see on the right-hand side chart, we're initially anticipating about 1.8 average growth rate for global gas demand in the next 5 years, and now we have revised it down to 1.5, and the difference, cumulative difference, is about 75 BCM of demand growth, which will be lost for the next 5 years. This slower demand will also have impact on the supply side. And one of the most visible impacts is for global LNG trade, which has been the main driver behind the development of international gas trade in the past decade. On the supply side, we see that the current COVID crisis will have repercussions, and the sluggish recovery and slower demand growth coincide with the strong development of new LNG export capacity, which result from a massive wave of new investment, which reached its record last year with 95 BCM year of new export projects sanctioned for about $65 billion of investment confirmed last year. These capacity additions, they are likely to outpace LNG needs and increase the prospect of structurally loose LNG market for the coming years, unless, of course, additional demand is triggered by even lower gas prices. But at any cost, this loose market and potential downside prices will cast a long shadow investment in the whole gas value chain, both for exploration, production, and infrastructure, which can in turn put at risk the future market balance of production from those depleting resources not supported by new developments. So I would like now to end the floor to Gergely, who will share with you more detailed insights on what is happening, how we see the evolution for the European market.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste. Gergely, you Okay with the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. You can put on your camera because I haven't seen you before.
It would be a pleasure, but I'm afraid that the connection issues might be a problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So, first of all, I would like to thank you, our colleagues at the Club Español de la Energía, for organizing this webinar, and I would like to thank you, Jean-Baptiste, for providing this excellent overview of the global gas market dynamics. And looking at Europe, we see that European gas markets have been facing a perfect storm since the beginning of the year. Already before the start of the lockdowns, gas demand was under the weather, primarily due to mild temperatures and strong wind speeds. According to the measurements of the Royal Meteorological Institute of the Netherlands, Q1 was the fourth warmest first quarter since their records begin in 1901. Heating degree days across Europe's main gas-consuming regions were down by over 5% year-on-year, which naturally weighed on gas demand in the residential and commercial sectors. Our estimates shows that it has decreased by over 3% in Q1. In addition to mild temperatures, we had a particularly strong wind in February. Wind power output was up by over a third, or 30 terawatt hours, which weighed on overall thermal generation requirements, including gas-fired power, which fell by 10 terawatt hours, depressing gas-to-power demand by approximately 2.5 BCM. The lockdowns had, of course, a significant impact on gas demand, falling by 11% year-on-year between 11th of March and end of May, which in absolute terms translate into a drop of 10 BCM. And on the right hand, you see the decrease by sectors for a sample of countries. Lockdowns impacted primarily on the industrial and power generation sectors, while distribution network consumption was less affected. Residential consumption even benefited from colder temperatures in the second half of March, but declined in April and May due to lower heating degree days and decreasing activity in the service sector. European electricity consumption decreased by 12% under the lockdowns, severely weighing on gas-fired power generation, which fell by over 20%, equivalent to an estimated 5 BCM of lost gas use. This has been largely driven by Europe's largest consumers of gas-fired electricity, Italy, the United Kingdom, or Spain, where gas-fired generation dropped by 25%, and in Spain by around 30%. Industrial gas demand in the countries imposing stricter lockdown measures, such as Belgium, France, Italy, Spain, or the UK, fell by over 15% during that period. And to end the slide on a more positive note, let's say a couple of words about June. Despite electricity consumption falling by close to 10% year-on-year, first data point shows that after the steep falls in April and May, gas demand remained stable year-on-year in June and have even shown some modest growth in the European Union and the United Kingdom. This has been primarily driven by gas-fired power generation, which started to recover on the back of lower nuclear output in France, falling by almost 9 terawatt hours, and coal to gas switching amidst the record low gas prices and carbon recovering to above 25 euros. Following the demand side, now let's have a look on supply. As highlighted by Jean-Baptiste, despite shrinking gas demand, global LNG trade grew strongly in the first 5 months of the year by above 8%. In this context, Europe has been playing a crucial balancing role by absorbing around 2/3 of incremental LNG supply amid subdued demand growth in Asia. As such, despite its plummeting gas demand, European energy imports increased by 20% year-on-year, thanks to its regasification capacity, flexible pipeline supply sources, and ample storage space. And the United States became the largest source of energy supply to Europe, overtaking Qatar and Russia, and accounting for over 25% of Europe's energy imports. The energy influx into Europe primarily weighed on the import flows of traditional pipeline suppliers. Imports from Russia and North Africa both decreased by about 25%, and Norwegian flows fell by 5% year-on-year, with deliveries decreasing substantially via the Langeland pipeline and to St. Fergus. Most recent data points for June shows a somewhat different story. The collapse of the transatlantic price spread between TTF and Henry Hub in April and May resulted in flow diversions away from the European market, as well as in some cargo cancellations, which overall reduced energy imports by around 1/3 month-on-month and almost 10% year-on-year. However, this did not provide any substantial support to pipe suppliers. Russian gas deliveries fell by around 20%, flows from North Africa plummeted by 30%, and Norwegian pipe deliveries were 7% down year-on-year in June. One of the most popular topics this gas year has been gas storage, and not without a reason. European storage played already a key role in balancing out the global gas market last summer, when the wide seasonal spreads supported strong injections and helped to absorb surplus energy. Moreover, the expected expiry of the transit contract via Ukraine provided further incentive to put additional gas into storage for some suppliers and midstream players. As a consequence, the opening stocks in this gas year have been 15% higher than their 5-year average at the beginning of the heating season. And as we discussed earlier, we pretty much missed the heating during this heating season. This energy influx remained strong, and COVID-19 induced lockdowns further depressed demand since mid-March. By beginning of July, European working gas storage capacity was over 80% full, with less than 20 BCM of remaining spare capacity. Should injection rates continue at the same pace as observed since beginning of April and incentivized by seasonal price spreads, European storage capacity would be saturated before the end of the injection season. Please note that this is not an official IEA view or projection, just an observation made based on historical data. So what is next for Europe? After a steep fall of 7% in 2020, European gas demand is expected to recover close to its pre-crisis level and remain stable through the forecast period. In the power sector, the gradual phase out of over 50 gigawatts of nuclear, coal, and lignite-fired power generation capacity creates additional market space for gas-fired power plants. However, growth is limited by the rapid expansion of renewable power generation, set to increase by almost 30% over the medium term. Natural gas demand in industry is expected to recover to its pre-crisis levels, while further growth potential remains limited. Europe's requirements are expected to increase by over 10%, or 45 BCM per year in the next 5 years, despite stagnant demand. This will be driven by rapidly declining domestic production in Northwest Europe, including the Netherlands, where Grandpa Groningen is taking its early retirement by mid-2022, and small fields are decreasing their output by a steady rate of 10% per year. Norwegian pipeline supplies to the rest of the continent remain stable. the relative proximity of its production assets, including swing fields such as Troll and Oseberg, allow Norway to play a key role in providing flexible gas supplies to an increasingly import-dependent European market. And Europe's growing import requirements and progressive expiry of existing long-term supply contracts create market opportunities for both traditional and emerging pipeline suppliers, as well as for LNG. The start of commercial deliveries via the Trans-Adriatic pipeline in October 2020 should allow Azeri gas supplies to increase by 8 BCM per year through the forecast period. Pipeline imports from Russia are expected to fluctuate in a range between 170 and 200 BCM per year, supplied through a combination of long-term contracts, short-term auctions, and direct spot sales to the European hubs. Following a record of 115 BCM of LNG imports in 2019, we expect Europe to continue to play a key role in balancing the global gas market by providing access to its spare regasification capacity, ample storage space, and liquid pricing hubs. LNG imports are expected to oscillate in a range of 90 to 110 BCM per year through the medium term. And with that, I would like to ask Jean-Baptiste to make some concluding remarks. Thank you.
Okay. Gergely, Jean-Baptiste, would you like to add something more, or?
Yes, maybe just a couple of comments to wrap up the presentation. Yes. Okay. So this year we're experiencing, as Gergely mentioned, a perfect storm with 3 demand shocks. One of the warmest winter ever recorded in the Northern Hemisphere. This unprecedented slowdown in activity triggered by the lockdowns from the COVID-19 pandemic, and the expectation of a very slow recovery after the lifting of the lockdowns. We do anticipate that all regions and all users of natural gas will be impacted by the demand shock, but most of the impact will be concentrated in mature markets, in OECD countries across Europe, North America, Asia, and in Eurasia, and particularly in Russia. We do also anticipate that most of these losses will be recovered next year, but this doesn't mean a return to business as usual for the global gas industry in the near future, because demand will rebound at a slower rate while supply is kicking very strongly, which raises the prospect of an oversupply market for the short to medium term. Also raises the issue of how to secure investment to guarantee security of supply and availability of supply in the longer run. Since the beginning of this crisis at the IEA, we've been engaging with all the stakeholders, the governments and the industry, to try to assess the impacts of this crisis and try to draw some roadmaps for sustainable recovery. And as part of those efforts, this natural gas outlook, which used to be an annual update, is now going to be updated on a quarterly basis, and which is also being made available for free to all interested participants through our website. So the next update of our analysis is due to come out in October. So please stay tuned if you're interested to know our latest development, and we'll be happy to share them with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste. We will be looking for this report in October or something like this. Okay, thank you very much. Now we are going to go to a short roundtable at the Spanish Association about this forecast. Ana, would you like to introduce our roundtable and our people there?
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Yes, I would like to introduce this roundtable. We are going to put now the focus in Spain. For that, we have the pleasure of having with us 3 very good panelists. They are industrial engineers, the three of them, who are currently in charge of gas-related association in Spain, as Arcadio said. They don't need to be presented, but in case someone just joined, we have Javier Rodríguez Morales. He's Managing Director of Acogen, the Spanish Association for Cogeneration, or CHP producers. Then we have also Verónica Riviere Aguirre. Hello, Verónica. Is Managing Director of Gas Industrial, the association that represents in Spain industry of different sectors that have all in common being big gas consumers. And then we have also Marta Margarit. Hello, Marta. She's the Secretary General of Sedigas, the Spanish gas association that group together all the corporation bodies and individuals related to gas. Thank you very much to the three of you for being here. We are gonna try to have this session in English, and I thank you for doing the effort of doing in English if you can, for in deference to our IEA colleague who don't speak too much Spanish. And I have two couple of questions for you. We hear from the IEA how COVID-19 is expected to impact in the gas markets in the next 5 years at global level and European level. And I would be very pleased if you could tell me how do you see this impact in particular in Spain, and if you see any difference in our country from what they have presented for Europe. They spoke about a perfect storm in Europe, and I would like to know your point of view about this. And in addition, I would like to ask you about what do you think are the main drivers and uncertainties for the future gas supply and demand in Spain. I'm afraid this session I think will last until 11:15 more or less, and you have 8 minutes each of you for the two questions. I think since the time is limited, it's better if we do just one turn. And I think let's follow the same order than in the program. So we can start with Javier. If you want, Javier, you can take the floor now.
Hello, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Enerclub to have this opportunity to share this table with the gas sector, also with the industrial consumers, and with the CHP industries. Okay? All of us, we are allies to reactivate the Spanish economy with more industry, more efficiency, and also higher degrees of decarbonization. For the future, the Spanish CHP sector in the next 5 years could increase or demand gas up to a level of 15–20%. Okay, with the right measures in place, Spanish industry together with the gas sector and the CHP activities will look to a future with higher production and demand. I'll give you a snapshot of Spanish CHP sector. We stand for 20% of gas demand, national gas demand, 20%. We produce 12% of the national electricity, and we manufacture 20% of the Spanish industrial GDP. Okay, the mix of the industries that uses CHP in Spain, it's a mix of around 60% in 3 essential sectors. First of all, the food and beverage sector, with more or less 20%. Second, the pulp and paper sector. And the third one, also with 20%, the chemical sectors. All these activities have been essential during this crisis in order to supply not only to national market, but in general terms, 50% of industrial production related to CHP goes to exportation. Okay. Also in the industrial mix of CHP, we have 10% of the ceramic sector, another 10% in refinery activities, and the remaining 20% is also a mix among different activities, residues, textile, automotive, wood industries, and so on. Okay? During this COVID crisis, this first crisis, in March, CHP production hit the bottom floor with a minus 30% production related to previous year. Okay? The good news is that in only 3 months, from March, minus 30%, we were able to recover almost 20 points in just 3 months. Okay? In June, only the levels were in the range of 10% minus the previous years, and we are confident that with right measures in place and with following this progression, we were able to finish the year with around 5%, 5 to 10% decrease of demand in this situation. Okay. What have we learned of this first crisis? We learned the importance of three keys. Okay, the first one is regulation, how to react and adapt to regulation. The second one is the importance of the organized gas markets. And the third one is the potentials and the facts about the synergies between energy and industrial sector to reactivate and future growth. Okay, on the first part, on the regulation, I have to say that the Spanish government did a very good job, an excellent job, reacting to this crisis promptly and putting in place measures to secure the supply, also to make possible the flexibility of the consumptions, of the contracts, and also some of the obligations. So we were able to flexibilize in a proper time. When it comes to CHP, also the Spanish government took ex post measures. Okay? We thank those measures. Ex post is right, but it's much better ex ante measures. No? That are the measures that we are working for the near future for the CHP sector. The second lesson we had was how important is to have a higher component of the organized gas market prices among industrial contracting. In Spain, we have a heavy component in many contracts of long-term gas prices related to fuels and others. And in this crisis, we realized that the inertia of these contracts was heavy in order to adapt to new and more competitive prices of organized markets. Okay, so in the future, and especially in CHP activities, we trust that all participations and the links with spot and derivative markets, organized markets, will be increasingly higher. On the third part, this fast recovery that we had in CHP makes us think that when you integrate the opportunities of energy activities into the industrial operation, together with industrial operations, CHP, the industrial activities are more resilient, they recover faster, and also they have much capacity to grow and take the opportunities of the energy transition. Okay. Here in Spain, I think, as I say, the situation in Europe, we think we have some special characteristics in Spain in order to achieve a higher growth for the next 5 years. The first is that we count with first-class gas sector, okay? Not only in LNG capacities, but also with gas, the transport and sister operation, and also with our utilities and the many players in the markets. We have an impressive developments of organized gas market and gas in this year, also in previous year. Okay, so we count with a first-class gas sector. The second point is that Spain, when you look to the future, is a perfect place for growing in industrial activities employment, especially in energy-intensive industries. If we take the advantages of the huge potential of renewables in Spain, together with the right integration with the gas system and the synergies to grow industries, Spain priority should focus in this industrial renaissance. Okay, so for the future, with a more competitive and integrated energy prices and sector together with the industry in Spain, we will be able to grow in industry and all the quality employment activity that it brings. Okay, the third important thing that we have in Spain is that we still have much possibilities to grow not only in industry by fuel switching. For example, as I said before, CHP sector could increase 15 to 20% of gas demand, half of it just coming from liquid fuel switching into gas. Okay, and also related with this increase in industrial production, mainly focus or in our case, mainly focus for exportation. Okay, and Spain is a perfect place for industry. We need to maintain the industry we have and to reinforce existing facilities and to capture investments in new industries together with all the new investments in the energy sector, the electrical and also the gas sector. The third important difference is the role that our combined cycle generation activities are going to play in this transition. The role is essential, and we believe they are going to have an increasing presence together with renewables. So we were the main drivers and uncertainties when we came to the CHP demand and activity. Okay, main driver for CHP is industry. No industry, no CHP. Also, with less CHP, we will have less heat-intensive industry. So, industry is our main driver to increase CHP demand and production. On the second hand, the main uncertainty is regulation. Okay? When it comes to CHP, we have regulations in place that they need to be updated. We need measures in order to maintain our plants. At the end of the year, 50 plants, more than 500 megawatts, will end up their actual economical legal scheme in Spain. So we need new legislation in place to give another cycle of regulation to all these industries. That will be more or less half of the sector, around 2,500 megawatts in 5 years, that they have to renew and they have to invest in energy transition, more efficiency, and decarbonization. Okay, so the growth of the future in industry and especially in the CHP sector, the way to avoid further falling of demands and activity and welfare in the country is to put right measures in place to promote this kind of activity, which is CHP, highly related to industry, and to give the priority as a general interest for industry in Spain. As I said before, the facts prove that Spanish industry has a strong capacity to grow and to play a more significant role in the Spanish economy in the next 5 years. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Javier. Very, very clear. I like your idea of having a first-class gas sector in Spain. Now is the turn for Verónica Riviere. Verónica, when you want, 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want also to thank Arcadio and all the Enerclub the invitation to participate to this gas seminar. It's a pleasure to be here. Regarding the question of the gas markets, I think the main difference between Spain and the rest of Europe is that Spain is an island. We have a very small connection with France along the Pyrenees. This connection is not a lot used, but we are connected with the rest of Europe through 6 fantastic regasification plants. The mix of the supply of gas over in Spain last year was 60% through the LNG plants and 40% through the pipeline connected with Algeria. The gas contracts usually with Algeria are linked to Brent and Eurodollars indexes, and LNG is more linked to gas markets. That mix makes that the gas prices in Spain don't move the same way with the European prices. As the oversupplied that we have in the world of LNG, the gas prices in Spain are more aligned to the European ones. We can see it also this year, 2020, that the mix of supply of gas in Spain was bigger with LNG. It rose to 72% through the natural gas plants and only 28% through the connection to Algeria. Also, a very positive point of Spain is the implementation of the virtual tank balance this 1st of April that makes our country more dynamic. I think it's a very good point. It's as Javier said, I also like very much the sentence he said of first-class sector. I think the implementation of the virtual tank of balance makes our suppliers more competitiveness and more flexible, more agile. And this makes the Spanish prices more aligned to the European ones, and the gap of the prices are reduced. This is a very important point to the industry sector because the gas consumption is higher, or the energy prices are very important in their budgets. So if we move if we move the same way as the other industries in Europe, it's a good point. And if we can reduce the gap, it's better. Regarding the demand of gas in Spain, usually 60% of the demand of gas is industry, 20% gas generation of electricity, and 20% domestic consumers. Last year, as in different, a little bit we reacted, or our gas consumption was different if we compare it with the rest of Europe, because we have a high generation electricity. The demand was the maximum of other years. The consumption in Spain was of 400 terawatt hour over the year. It was a very good year of gas consumption. And in 2020, the impact of the lockdown was heavy. and hard, and was similar of the rest of, if you compare with the rest of Europe, and the recovery is being, we recover in the same way as the other countries. I think the main difference, if we compare with Europe, on the one side, industry, it will depend of the competitiveness of or the economic recovery of the country, and also with the other countries, because in Spain we export a lot of our manufacturing products, so we are linked with all the world and the rest of Europe. On the other side, I'm very confident with electricity generation with gas, because of the switching or the closure of the coal companies who produce, one of the coal companies, the coal generation with coal, and switching to a more green energy that is gas. So I think by the end of the year, we will end with a consumption similar to 2018, more than 2019. With the consumption in 2018 was 350 terabytes, and I think we will have this similar demand. And on the side of the industry, I think the main point is the competitiveness with prices and to reduce the gap with the other countries of Europe. And I think these are the main points of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. I think you pointed out very well what makes Spain different. Now is the turn for Marta Margarit. Marta, when you want, take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. As the other teammates, I would like to thank the opportunity to express the vision of Sedigas in this webinar. It is always a pleasure to listen and learn from the experts. So thank you, Arcadio, for always bringing the International Energy Agency here.
Thank you to Jean-Baptiste and Gregory, and you.
Well, during the COVID period, gas supply was guaranteed by the industry. You know that. Gas sector showed solidarity with the situation, and not only maintaining the operations, but also offering its capacities to the health system and to all the society. I'm not going to give more detail than that, but I would like to state this very clearly. As it has been said already, demand was down by 10% during the period, mainly because of the industrial demand, which was the most affected. It went down up to 24% in the worst part of the pandemic. Up to now, it has not been full recovery. But our estimations foresee that it will take more than 1 year to recover the demand completely before the COVID. So by the end of 2021, demand will boost around 6%. This is our best estimate. So looking to the future, the sector is working on decarbonizing all sectors, right? So we see that the pandemic is already in the past, not the effects, but we are looking to the future, and looking to the future, the sector is working in order to be decarbonized. So as Javier and Veronica said already, industry consumption, which is directly correlated to GDP, right? So most of the industry that is using gas now will use the gas in the future, because it has not other fuel to use and serve on the same way. On the other hand, mobility, where gas is a clear solution today to improve air quality and reduce CO2, is another sector that we are working on to be there and help the society to be decarbonized. Also, energy efficiency in the residential sector, where gas solutions provide comfort and savings for the consumer, for the consumer and for the country, right? All the hybrid solutions, with gas and solar, for example, right? This is the best solution where on the coal parts of the country. And also we are investing in renewable gas projects. Biomethane and hydrogen are the gases of the future, as you know already. So all these activities will help to recover the economy in the short term. We are completely aligned with the government on the lines of that the recovery will be green and digital. So the activities mentioned will create local employment. Renewable gases, for example, are produced where the waste is generated, and hydrogen is produced where photovoltaic energy is placed. So that means that the employment will be local, will be on these places, not only on cities. So, and finalize, looking at 2030, we foresee a gas infrastructure supplying a blending on natural gas and renewable gases. The path to decarbonization has started. We all know that. We are there, and we will remain to serve the society as long as the society needs us. Because the energy sector requires gas to fulfill the increasing demand of the earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta, for being so brief.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's time now for the debate. Arcadio, you want to take the floor?
Thank you. I would like to give 2 minutes to Raúl Junta. He's here. He is. We would like to ask him about the market in these 2 or 3 months after COVID. No, maybe 2 minutes. Raúl, could you put your camera on?
Yes, well, I will try. This has not been prepared. I don't know if you are listening.
Just 2 minutes, Raúl.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Arcadio, and thank you for all of you for your presentation, for your very nice presentations. I would like to underline only a couple of ideas. The first one is they have been told by Jean-Baptiste and Gergely and also by Verónica is about the importance of the LNG. This is something that in which we are very involved about a new regulation, in particular with the TVB, with the Tanque Virtual de Balance, in which we are very involved. In particular, I would like to underline that we have started in MidGas with the negotiation of LNG products. This is something that is pioneering in Europe. And I hope that this will be very well developed in the future and will attract the participation of many people in order to improve the first class sector that Javier also has mentioned. And also, just in order to finish, I would like to support the ideas of Marta Margarit about the importance of the renewable gases. So we have listened many different aspects, many different particular points of view that I really appreciate, and I believe that we are in a good process in order to get and to be a first-class sector and also a first-class regulation, in my view. That's all. Thank you very much, Arcadio, for.
Okay. Thank you, Raúl. I will jump to the Q&A session, Pablo, and maybe Jean-Baptiste could start with this idea of the only one tank.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for your speeches and presentations. I think it was very interesting. For the IEA, Gergely and Jean-Baptiste, we have questions concerning the future, as always. You've talked about demand forecast. You've talked about future behavior of Europe's LNG imports, but they're asking you if you can say something about price forecast, about what's going to happen with US unconventional gas, And third thing about the future, how does the agency see the role of renewable gas and hydrogen in the future?
Okay, thanks a lot, Pablo, for the questions. Those are three main drivers of the medium to long term impact. First, for the first question, this is the multi-billion question on how the prices will be in the future. Unfortunately, I have to put some sort of formal disclaimer. The IEA doesn't provide any price forecast. We do take some assumptions, which are the market's assumption. Basically, we take the forward prices provided by the market, and we base our forecast based on those assumptions. The way the short-term markets currently see the market is a rebound after the summer. We probably will see low prices. Again, this is not an official prediction by the IEA, it's just a personal feeling. I think that the summer months will be a difficult moment for the industry, especially for the suppliers, unless we have some support from Asia, which is usually the case because of the cooling needs in Asia. So some of that flexible LNG goes back to South Asia. But after the summer, there's a hope that price rebound at the beginning of the heating season. The main difference we have this year compared with the previous years is that the storage level is particularly high, and there will be less additional needs for supply for the coming winter, given that strong buffer storage. On the US production, the dynamics are particularly complex because the role of oil is more and more important for shale gas production in the United States, even if, broadly speaking, it only accounts for 20 to 25% of shale gas production. This associated gas production, especially in the Permian Basin in Texas, has been the most dynamic component of growth in US production in the past 5 years. So what we see currently is very complex dynamics. On the one hand, of course, oil production is declining in the US very quickly because of the impact on the oil glut. But at the same time, this is very sensitive because we're not talking about one big producer, such as in the Middle East. There's no single monopoly in the US for oil production. There's a multitude of small producers with very different sensitivities to costs. And what we have seen in the past weeks, as the WTI oil price shows some sign of recovery, we've seen some of those marginal producers restarting production. So the general trend is down, but we see some upwards dynamics in terms of production, depending on the level of sensitivity to prices that the different producers have. And of course, this is impacting the gas production. So I would say that in terms of overall gas production, we do see some downturn. This is something that we showed, especially for June with the presentation. Part of it can be also mitigated by even lower imports from Canada, for instance, and the question of the recovery of production will be both linked to the ability of the sector to mobilize investment in new drilling capacity and also to the rebound of oil prices. And third question on the green gases. So at the IEA, we cover all technologies and all fuels. And when we talk of gas, we talk more and more not of natural gas, but gases in general, which does encompass, of course, natural gas, but also biogas and hydrogen. And we do strongly believe that all those gases will be a strong component of Europe's energy mix in the medium to long term to achieve a clean energy transition to sustainable energy mix. the question of renewable gases, whether it be hydrogen or biogas, is of course a very important question. Has been highlighted by the EU strategy, which was unveiled this week, but its impacts will span a much longer time horizon than the 5-year forecast that we've shared with you today. So what we see in the next 5 years is a consolidation of the requirements in terms of policy support, in terms of investment, which are needed to make this clean gas revolution happen in the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to ask you about, say, the European hydrogen strategy. What do you think about it? Jean-Baptiste just mentioned it. What's your view on that? Maybe the panelists can join in.
Sorry, Pablo, who are you asking the question? Are you asking the question to Pablo?
To the panelists, maybe you can answer. What's your view on European hydrogen strategy?
European?
I don't have a good connection.
Hydrogen. The hydrogen.
Okay, yes.
I understood hydrogen.
Okay, thank you. Well, as I said, we see on the hydrogen the future of the renewable gas with together with biomethane. So Europe is working on putting together a good strategy. So we need a strategy to start working on that. Hydrogen today is something that we have to start working for the future. It's not a reality today. Today we have some pilots, we have some samples, but in order to go big and to go commercial, we need to work a lot in investigation and development projects. So we think Europe is doing a good job putting it together and driving and showing the path we need to go.
Okay. Thank you very much. For the agency, the Clean Energy Summit from yesterday, the main conclusions from that Energy Transition Summit and the role of gas in it. I don't know if you're okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, very quickly, just to remind that we, as you rightly said, the DIE hosted a Clean Energy Summit yesterday with very large participation from governments across the globe discussing the recovery and beyond the sustainable path to energy transition. And the role of renewable gases was clearly highlighted as one of the outlets needed to be pursued to achieve this goal. And of course, in the medium term, natural gas is the best option to ensure the bridge towards this transition to a renewable gases economy in the longer term.
Okay, thank you very much. Javier, you talked about, well, also Verónica and Marta about the industry. What do you think is needed to enhance the industry in Spain? You talked a little bit about this, and maybe you can join in the conversation.
Well, regarding hydrogen, we have to take into account that hydrogen and economy related is a source of growth of industry in Spain by itself, a new sector with much activity to add and integrate with all our power to gas, renewable capacities. But also when it comes to heat intensive industries, industries that we demand high temperature heat, hydrogen and biogas, renewable gas is the only way to decarbonize all these industrial activities in sectors that are essential. So when we look into the future for these energy intensive sectors, the role of hydrogen and the role of renewable gas is essential in order to decarbonize these activities that they are not keen at all to electrification, by technical reasons and also by competitiveness reasons.
Okay, sorry, I have a bad connection. I'm gonna give the word to Anna. I'm gonna send her the questions so she can address them to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat, and there is another question for Acogen. It's asking about if it's finally included cogeneration as part of the PNIEC. Javier, there's a question for you.
Yes, the situation of the CHP sector in the national energy and climate planification, it counts with around the renewal of 1,200 megawatts of CHP. We have a problem because I think this plan should be updated with the new conditions that we have after COVID. Okay? And the role of natural gas and the role especially of CHP should be updated. In fact, the national plan was pointing for a reduction of a heavy reduction for the year 2030 of the CHP participation in the energy mix of the country, which definitely we assure with the right measures in place. And in this situation, the CHP has a strong opportunity to grow and to add efficiency and less emissions to the country up to the year 31st. And afterwards, the CHP is an ally in order to develop all this hydrogen and renewable gas economy. Okay, so definitely CHP is going to be a significant player, and I'm sure that CHP actual conditions in the National Energy and Climate Plan should be updated in order to reinforce the role of CHP in Spain and industry-related developments.
Okay, Javier and Verónica, Marta, they are asking as well about your vision on the PNIEC in general, and about in particular about the investment need in the natural gas in Spain. If you want to add something about that, please.
I completely agree with what has been said before. Our future must be green, but we have a high risk of delocalization of industry. We live in a globalization planet. All is globalized, and factories and industry can move easily to other countries with regulation and not so green, for saying that in this way. And we have to be very concerned with green energy, a green future, but prices also are very important, and industries have to compete with the rest of the world here in Spain. So that's the other point of view of with the industry.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for the question. Yeah, we think that the PNIEC is a good tool for Europe in order to compromise all the member states to go to a decarbonized economy. That's for sure. We were happy to see that there are measures to increase and to improve renewable gases. Of course, we would like more. Of course, that's always. And but we think that natural gas has also a role in there, because natural gas is very consolidated. We have a very good infrastructure that will last for 2030 and 2050, and this would have been, it has been better written over there, right? And also the CCGTs are considered. We see that the increase of renewables is very important, but they still need a combined cycle fueled by gas in order to give flexibility and supply to the electric system.
Thank you, Marta. Arcadio, we have another question. If you want, we can
maybe...
Okay, the last one is for the IEA. For Jean-Baptiste, maybe.
Jean-Baptiste and Gergely.
Yes, they are asking about the role of the combined cycle in the future according to the new renewable capacity. So then I think it's related to what Marta was saying. And also they are asking if we can share your PPT after these seminars. So Jean-Baptiste, if you want to say something about this question. And we end.
Yes, sure.
Can you hear?
A lot. Well, first, we'll be happy to share the presentation with anyone who's interested. We'll circulate the presentation after the
Thank you.
The end of the call. So the role of combined gas cycle globally and in Europe in particular, where the role of renewable is growing and will be pivotal in the future. Gas is to become the main source of power generation alongside with renewables in the future. What we see in Europe is a strong decline of coal. Much of the coal capacity is currently under a phase-out plan in Europe, with some exceptions in Central Eastern Europe. But apart from that, one of the biggest pieces in the UK, in Germany, are under plans to close down. And just to remind that only 20 years ago, coal was the main source of power generation in Europe. So we're not talking about such a long-term history. This is the first thing. The second is nuclear is also phasing out in several countries, and we do not see, apart from new plants being developed in Hungary and in Turkey, we don't see new developments for nuclear. So the role of gas will be pivotal alongside with renewables to ensure sustainability and security of power supply. Of course, the role of gas will be different in the future from what it is today. Today, it is providing base load and also intermittency. And in the future, it will be more and more providing a backup for the intermittent generation from renewables, which also calls some changes in terms of market design to ensure that the capacity for natural gas is available and it will be there to stay to ensure that the lights remain on when there's no wind and when there's no sun. But to give a short answer, gas, now natural gas, in the future renewable gas will remain an important and pivotal part of the power generation system in Europe.
Anna?
Yeah, from my side, I
call it
think,
today?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Jean-Baptiste and Gergely for coming here virtually. No, I think next time you will be here, we will get in touch to see what happened in October, no, with your new book is putting out. And thank you very much, Javier, Marta, Verónica, Raúl, que si todavía estás por aquí, and all of you for this meeting. Enjoy a good time in the near future and holidays, and thank you very much for coming. See you soon. Bye-bye.